Hello. As you can probably tell, this is not my usual place that I film these videos, but I kind of just wanted to get my thoughts out because I was talking to myself and I realized I could make an episode. So these are just going to be my unfiltered thoughts about the Raja Jackson situation and why I think it fits so well with this podcast and why I started this podcast. So, welcome back to another episode of Not All Men. I'm your host, Jerry. And like I said in the top, we're going to be talking about the Raja Jackson situation and the ways that masculinity and black male masculinity plays a part in discussing all of this. I also want to discuss sort of like the coded language of some of the people who are discussing it and why, even though what someone did is awful and reprehensible, you still have to watch your coded language or how you speak about certain things because your racism will be showing. And then I also want to talk about this discussion. Surprisingly enough, I agree with Sean Strickland, which is something I never thought I was ever going to come out of my mouth. And I guess it's now on record. But I agree with Sean Strickland when his discussion about the prison system. And I will give you reasons why, as well as maybe some literature you should check out about the prison system and maybe why he feels the way that he feels as someone who's experienced it firsthand at a very young age. First, let's discuss what happened. On August 23rd, during a live stream at Knox Pro Wrestling LA, 25-year-old Raja Jackson, who was the son of MMA legend Rampage Jackson, during the live stream, there was an incident that had went down where one of the wrestlers at this event was like a pro wrestling, like WWE style. One of the pro wrestlers at the event thought Raja was a wrestler or someone who was trying to do a little of that kayfabe, I think it's called. And he smashed a prop beer onto Raja's head. And when Psycho Stu was informed that Raja's not a part of that and what you just did wasn't cool, he immediately apologized. He apologized to Raja on camera. He shook his hand multiple times, and Psycho Stu apologized multiple times for that, as well as the fact that you can tell that he is intoxicated, which isn't an excuse, but you can kind of just tell that he probably wasn't in his right mind. And so during the live stream, which I'm not going to show the clip. If you want to find the clip, it's pretty much everywhere. I'm personally not going to show it. It's a very tough clip to watch. And I don't know. I just think enough people have it out there that I don't need it on my platform. But during the event, at first it seemed like Raja was okay, right? It seemed like he was a little shaken by that, but more like, why the hell did he do that? And just kind of shaken by it, but not really too upset about it. But over time, and even right after it happened, some of the wrestlers said, well, hey, he did that to you, so you can get your lick back later, or you can get your receipt or pull receipt or whatever the hell they said. You can do that later. And so I think I see some people try to say that they were telling an MMA fighter that, like, oh, you can go in there and get your receipt or pull his receipt or whatever. And like he's an MMA fighter because Raja is a professional MMA fighter, or he trains MMA. I don't know if he's professional, but I believe he is. And I want people to kind of like don't baby someone's intelligence with this. Raja knew that this was fake pro wrestling, right? He knew that. And everybody who has ever watched at least one episode of WWE knows that whenever they go to like hit each other or whatever, it's fake. Those are fake punches. They're fake elbowing each other. It's not real, right? Like whenever they go in to punch, it's not real. Or when they power bomb, you can always tell that the wrestler's head is up whenever they go to do it, and they're warned that it's going to happen because they rehearse these things, because they discuss these things, because it's fake. Even though wrestlers can, like WWE style wrestlers, can get harmed for what they do in the ring. A lot of it is them trying to prevent that. A lot of it is they want to prevent that as much as possible because it's a performance. They're athletes, but it's also a performance. And Raja knows this. And I see some people trying to say that, like, oh, why would you tell a professional MMA fighter they can go in there and blah, blah, blah. Raja knew. And I just feel like to say that he doesn't kind of insults his intelligence as a 25-year-old man. Anyway, so as you probably already know, he goes in there and Raja, I think before he had even entered the ring, was already dealing with some issues personally. I think he was already and like as I think he had calmed down after the situation, like it still kind of sat with him wrong. But I think some factors played into what happened in the ring when he, as you know, picked up Psycho Stu, slammed him on the back of his head, and then had 20 something shots um, to this unconscious man, this unconscious father and husband, right? Or veteran. And I think that 2 factors or a couple factors played into it. I think that one of the factors was he was embarrassed that Psycho Stu hit him over the head with the beer bottle in front of a camera. If it had happened, I think off camera, I don't know if Raja would have reacted the same. I think he was embarrassed by that happening. And then also his dad calling him, which I'll get into a little bit later on his relationship with his dad, Rampage Jackson. I think that that played into it as well. His father calling him and making fun of him. I think that played into it as well. And I think that his fragile ego played into it as well. And then I also think that his chat also played into it. All of those things in combination made him do what he did. And that's not an excuse. Of course, it's not an excuse. What he did was absolutely disgusting. But I do think that those was what played into why he did what he did. Now, as I said earlier, I was going to get into a little bit of the relationship with him and his father. And I think that Rampage is, you can tell he's that kind of father or that kind of person who's always joking and not very serious. And his relationship with his children, or at least the one we see with Raja, is his relationship with his children. He tends to joke on them a lot, especially with his 2 older kids. He tends to joke on them quite a bit. With Raja, he'll make fun of the fact that he's vegan or vegan? No. I think he'll make fun of the fact that he's vegetarian, or he'll make jokes about the fighting that they've done, or he'll just make some jokes that you can tell kind of don't have any sensitivity about his son. And based off of some of the videos and clips that I've seen going around since this whole incident happened, Raja to me comes off as someone who has a lot of inner demons. And I think a part of those inner demons is his dad. And I think his dad and his mom, I haven't really looked into it, but I believe his mother did pass away a couple years ago. And his relationship with his mother was fractured as well before she had passed away. And so I think that his anger and a lot of his insecurity stems from that. And also, Rampage is, like I said, an MMA legend. And lots of people know him and hear what he has to say. And like I said, Rampage will talk publicly crap about his own kids and like in a joking manner, but like he'll talk crap about his own kids. And to me, seeing some of those clips from other interviews and things that Raja sat in on, he seems like someone who's a little bit of a sensitive kid. And I think that plays into it. I think that going back to what I said earlier, and again, I haven't scripted this video out. I just wanted to discuss it. But I think that his father calling him to make fun of him about, oh, you got beat up by some men in tights, or oh, I thought you were. He used a whole joke about baby oil, which I really wish he would stop with the whole baby oil jokes because they're not fucking funny. But he was making those types of jokes, right? And one of the things that you'll notice that happened right after when Raja was like walking out was he kept saying, I'm tired of people playing with me. I'm tired of people playing with me. It seems very extreme for a couple of people in chat and that guy just breaking or Psycho Stew hitting him over the head with the beer can, right? It seems like he's talking of a broader sense. I'm tired of people playing with me in a broader sense. It's almost like he's like him going off on Psycho Stew the way that he did had nothing to do with Psycho Stew, but more about his own fragile ego, his own fragile masculinity, his own relationship with his father, his relationship with his mother. And again, I don't want to psychoanalyze him, which I feel like I just did, but it almost kind of felt like he snapped And the more and more he was reading that chat, the more and more he was thinking about what his father said, the more and more he realized that that clip of him being hit in the head with the prop beer can was out there, the more and more it just riled up something within him that made him go off the way that he did. And I think that for black men, you'll notice for some black men, they almost have this, I don't want to say non-control of their emotions, but it's almost like they bottle up a lot of their emotions and let them out at like the most inopportune or worst time. I think Rampage knew that about his son. And instead of getting his son, and I think this is like, if anything, if we're gonna blame Rampage for anything, which I think he wasn't there, right? Rampage Jackson wasn't there. I don't think you could blame him for what happened, but I do think that Rampage, based off of other things that he said about his children, especially about Raja, is that he can tell that there is a demon and a darkness to his son. He could tell that his son is struggling with some mental health issues. I always wonder, like, did you get him help? Did you point this out to him instead of just telling us here and as the audience? Have you done anything like put your children in therapy or put your children in any sort of way of helping them through that anger and that grief? And I don't know. And I'm not going to say that he has or he hasn't, but this is just more of my thoughts about it. I don't know if I would turn my child to MMA, where a lot of issues can be exacerbated. I don't know if I turn my child to MMA as just that therapeutic thing and not really putting them through any sort of help, which again, talk therapy works for some, doesn't work for others. Psychiatry works for some, doesn't work for others. But I do think that it's important that if you see that kind of stuff in your own child, that you maybe do something about it besides just putting them in sports and telling them to, to let it all out in the ring. I think that it was important. If Rampage saw that within his son, he should have done something about it. And I just feel incredibly bad for Psycho Stew's family, because they were, I believe his dad was there. Children were in the audience. It's just a whole horrible situation. And I really want to send prayers out to his entire family and him. I just think it's such a heartbreaking situation to see. And then the fact that the family now probably has to go on the internet and see clip after clip after clip of that incident happen. I think that's tough. Now, another thing I wanted to discuss is something that happens a lot in the MMA community, and especially people who clearly haven't done the reading or the work about discussing race, class, gender, sexuality, all of those things. They're using coded language and then they're being surprised when people are like, hey, you don't need to say that. Like, calling Raja an animal. Listen, you can say what Raja did was disgusting, reprehensible. I agree with you. It was awful. It didn't need to happen. He deserves punishment. But you don't have to use coded language like an animal to call a person, especially a black man, that. All that further does is dehumanize a group of people. And essentially why people tell you not to do it. Um, just like lumping in all people who are from Mexico as criminals is a bad thing to do. I can't believe we have to continue to have this discussion. All it does is dehumanize people. It dehumanizes those who aren't even involved, and it's not needed. I don't need to use racism or any other derogatory term in order to have a discussion about Raja or what he did. Um, I don't really need to do that, and I feel like other people don't need to do that. I think that the MMA fan base has been definitely influenced by a certain very large creator, MMA guru. I think they've been influenced by a lot of his rhetoric and everything that he says. And MMA guru has a lot of interesting takes. His takes, they're interesting. Um, a lot of it comes from a very bigoted place. I'm not saying that he's a bigot, but some of his viewpoints are a little bigoted. They're bigoted, they're biased. I could go into so many things about he's an interesting guy. Moving on, but you don't have to use that kind of language when talking about a Black person in their crimes because it's a dog whistle. As much as you want to act like it isn't, which granted, MMA Guru isn't from America, so maybe it's different. But um, in America, calling a Black man an animal is a dog whistle. It's a dog whistle, and it's what gets certain people harmed and dehumanized. And that's why we don't use that kind of language. It's not about people being PC, it's not about people being too sensitive. It's about the fact that that kind of language gets people harmed and hurt. And instead of focusing on Psycho Steve and what he and his family are needing, maybe promoting their GoFundMe, something like that, you are now using your platform to use that kind of language in a crowd where you know that in the past you've also used that type of coded language to talk about other people of color. Ridiculous, right? You can, I can walk and chew gum at the same time. I can say what Raja did was awful, disgusting, horrible, and then I can also not be a bigot at the same time. I don't know. Maybe it's a privilege that I have, or maybe it's, a skill that I have that MMA Guru hasn't possessed yet. I don't know. I just think it's important to have that discussion when you're discussing this because it is a part of the conversation now. It is a part of the conversation now because certain people have made it part of the conversation, as well as the fact that people are sending racist things to Rampage Jackson, the father of Raja, who again wasn't there. And as much as I said in the beginning that I do think that his dad and the way he picks on him may have affected the way that Raja handled the situation, at the end of the day, Raj's dad didn't do anything, right? To send him racist to send him racist messages does what? It does what? Nothing. What does it solve? Who does it help? No one. So yeah, that's a piece that I want to highlight because I think it's important that when you're having these discussions, you don't need to be a fucking bigot to have them. Another aspect that I want to discuss is I have been one of those people who are 100% wondering why he hasn't been arrested yet. I think a part of it is his relation to his dad. Even though I wouldn't say Rampage Jackson is like the biggest star in the world, he has enough pull, right? I mean, at least enough, right? And I don't think as privileged as some of the people who are famous. I don't think he's like top tier A list, but he has some. And I think that another thing is I think people need to be patient. There's been plenty of, as somebody who consumes a lot of true crime, there's been plenty of times where people have done something and they weren't arrested for a while. So I think people just need to be patient, oddly enough. I also think that when we look at Raja, when we look at who his dad is, when we look at the money and access that him and his family probably possess, it would not surprise me if Raja didn't go to jail or if he really didn't face any hard consequences from it. Because that's just how our system works. Even though Raja is a Black man, a Black 25-year-old grown man, he's still someone who has that privilege of money and access. His dad can get him probably the best lawyers. So I do think that plays a role in it as well. Now, going back to my statement earlier, I agree with Sean Strickland. Never thought those words would ever come out of my mouth again. But here's what he had to say on Twitter that got him some backlash. And I'll tell you which parts I agree with and maybe my overall feelings. So Sean Strickland said on X, I'm calling it Twitter. I've always known it as Twitter. It's Twitter. Anyway, Jackson's kids shouldn't go to jail. Prison should always be a last resort. I was arrested at 19 for two felony for a I was arrested at 19 for two felony GBIs. I would have spent 5 to 6 years in prison if the DA had its way. After 6 years in a cell, coming out with nothing, being indoctrinated with gangs and violence, I guarantee I would have killed someone. There was one guy telling me about how he picked up a murder charge, and I remember being impressed by him. That would have been my future. Instead, I ple- I pled and took 100 days jail or work release, a ton of anger management, and a decent amount of victim restitution after a miserable 2 years of court. Luckily, a lawyer took my case for free because I didn't have a dollar to my name. Bottom line is, it's not about the person in prison, it's about who they become when they are out of prison. I believe If I wasn't offered that deal, I would be dead today and more than likely would have resulted in someone else's death as well. My 2 cents, rehabilitation over prison, always. I have never heard Sean Strickland speak so smart before. Um, and I also wouldn't have felt like he would have had this type of take. So that was interesting. And I have to say that I agree with a lot of what he's saying. The prison system in and of itself, and as much as you want to act like the prison system is great and fantastic, the prison system, all it really does is disappear people. It gets rid of people, especially black and brown people. It gets rid of them. It pulls them out of society, which sure is protection. But the whole point of the prison system is that it was supposed to rehabilitate and educate prisoners. So then when they go back into society, they understand what they did wrong and they are able to be a productive member of society. That's the point of prisons. Our jail system and the way that it is now does not do that. Sure, there are some people who go to prison who get degrees, master's degrees, who become lawyers. Sure. But that's not the majority. That's a minority. I do think that personally, Raja needs to be punished for what he did. And I believe because Raja comes from such privilege and he comes from such access and he comes from, probably a place where, he doesn't want for nothing. I sure think that he needs to face some type of legal consequences and there needs to be some type of restitution paid to the victim and his family. I do believe that. And I don't really want to make a judgment whether or not Raja should go to prison, but I do think understand where Sean Strickland is coming from. I have this book that is Prisons Make Us Safer and 20 Other Myths About Mass Incarceration. And a lot of people, when they talk about prison abolition, they think that, oh, you want to get rid of prisons and release all the criminals and you want them all out in the street, blah, blah. And it's, it's wanting to stop the way that prisons are being run today. If I believed that sending Raja to prison, which again, I don't really want to be the judge of that. It didn't happen to someone that I knew. It didn't happen to my family member. So I'm not going to be the judgment of on that. But I do think that people's backlash of what Sean Strickland said clearly are people who don't understand that the prison system in and of itself won't do anything but bring more harm because that's what prisons are for. That's what prisons are nowadays. People go in there and they're more likely to come out more traumatized than they were when they went in. People who they're thrown in the same prison as those who've committed atrocities, big crimes. They're thrown in the same prison as though they've committed the same crime. And it does nothing to rehabilitate people in there. It does nothing. It's slave labor. They're in there doing slave labor. There is um like I said, no rehabilitation within the prison system. And more than likely, people who go to the prison system are more than likely to go back into the system because our society does not let felons, our society does not let felons be able to ever succeed unless it is an access to privilege. So I wanted to talk about that as well because, again, this is a part of the conversation. And one of the wrestlers who pulled Raja off of Psycho Stew said that he just wants Raja to get some help. And I think that's all really people can ask for at this time. If the police choose not to charge him with anything, you at least hope that he will decide to maybe he will pay for those families' medical bills, that he will pay them for their pain and suffering. But then you also hope that he goes and gets help. I think our society a lot of the time goes straight to what's the punishment? How can I punish you? How can I, make you suffer? Instead of really thinking about what can we do productive wise to fix this situation? What does the family want? What does Psycho Stu want? At this point in time, they say that he's in a rough condition, which I think is really sad. At least by me recording this video at the moment, they say that he's still in a rough condition. And so I think that punishment needs to happen. he needs to be punished. But I think we should be also calling for him to get some help because clearly his father hasn't done that for him. And there's also clearly no one in his life who's willing to do that for him. And I think that's and I think that's just as important. Yes, he needs to face punishment, but there also needs to be some type of rehabilitation. Not just rehab, but there needs to be some deep soul searching, some deep discussions about trauma, some deep things he needs to deal with in order to be another productive member of society, which is what we want from people who are in the prison system. But we never get because our society, as well as the system within itself, doesn't allow it. Um, so yeah, I agree with Sean Strickland. Um, and I feel like a lot of people who are disagreeing to me don't quite are not grasping really what those systems do to people, how they really warp, how going into prison warps a lot of people's minds, especially those who have faced trauma and real problems. Yeah, but I suggest you check out this book, Prisons Make Us Safer, 20 Other Myths About Mass Incarceration, and maybe why, and also check out some books by Angela Davis. And it really will change your mind about this idea that in our society and in our world, we jump already to someone needs to go to prison. Why do we jump directly to that? And what those systems actually are and the fact that they're not helpful. Um, and again, I don't want to say what should happen to Roger or not. I'm not someone who's I feel well equipped to even really know, but I do think that he needs help. He definitely needs help. I think another big aspect that people are pointing out that I feel is important that the wrestling school, which I believe it was a wrestling school that they put on shows, I believe. I think they should be held accountable as well. Not the owner, because I believe the owner of the school wasn't there. That's what I heard. The owner of the school wasn't there. I think that anyone who had told Raja that he can get in the ring should be also held accountable, whether it's a ban from wrestling or banned from the school or banned from doing anything wrestling related. I do think there needs to be some punishment and consequences for that because a part of, at least from what I see from an outsider, is you're supposed to be, yes, you're supposed to be putting on a show, but you're also supposed to be taking care of each other. That's the reason why in the ring there is coordination. There is a winner and a loser that's a lot of the time already figured out. It's chaos, but it's chaos, but it's like controlled chaos. That's how these professional wrestling matches are supposed to be. It's supposed to be controlled chaos. And you bringing in someone and telling someone they can go in there and get their receipt or they can go in there and do whatever is wrong. Raja didn't come in, weeks before doing practice or go in there and do any coordination with Psycho Stu or anything like that, or with anyone, it seems. It seems like he had zero professional wrestling experience. And you're using certain language like pull his receipt, or you can get your payback. When to a person who is not in the field of professional wrestling, they may actually take that as, oh, I can go in there and beat him up. So I think there needs to be some accountability from those people who said that he can go in there and do that. I know that when we watch WWE and you see like random celebrity come into the ring and they like hit someone with an elbow or something like that's coordinated. Like they, even if they weren't practicing weeks to do that, that's still like a coordination. Like people knew that was going to happen. It's not something that they just pull out because like, oh my God, you showed up to the show. Like let's put you in there. Like you can go in there and do whatever you want. Like that's not, I mean, obviously that's not what happens. It's a coordinated thing, weeks in advance, even if that celebrity wasn't training for months to be a professional wrestler. They knew in that moment to do the move that they were supposed to do, um, to make sure that no one was harmed in the situation. It's still coordinated, like I said, coordinated chaos. And that was just completely. unprofessional, but also deadly. Stu could have lost his life all because you all because for what? For some entertainment purposes? That's completely irresponsible and they should be held accountable as well. The Raja Jackson situation, and hopefully I've been saying his name right this whole time. If I haven't, you know who I'm talking about. The Raja Jackson situation is just a to me, it's just like a big pot of just fucked up fucked up stew to not, you know, yeah, to that lack of a better phrase. It's just a pot of just fucked up. What happened has so many layers to it. Even though it was felt like something that when you were watching it, it felt like it happened so fast. But now it has opened up this Pandora's box of conversation about the prison system, about race, about professional wrestling, about all of it. And it brings me to also, as somebody who watches MMA, watches the UFC, watches professional wrestling sometimes. Um, I remember there was a fight a couple weeks ago where a fighter had picked up, almost in a similar fashion but different, picked up a fighter and did that whole slam thing on the back of the head. And he had like maybe one unanswered shot after he had already been knocked out. And I remember people being so worried about this fighter. He had been taken to the hospital and they said that he was okay. But I remember people being so worried because, getting a slam like that is deadly. There's a reason why there's a rule that you can't hit in the back of the head. There's a reason for that. That's not just because they're trying to be snippy or they're trying to, make sure your favorite fighter doesn't win. There's a reason why they have those rules in place because you can really, really hurt someone by hitting them in the back of the head. I believe there was a boxer who had passed away for getting hit in the back of the head. And there was a situation that happened, I believe, last month or a couple weeks ago, where who were a part of, um, two fighters who were a part of the same event at one night, or I believe they were either boxers or MMA. I can't remember, but two fighters, they were part of the same event, and both of them passed away. Combat sports is a serious, serious sport that has real consequences. And sure, me as a fan, I think about that every time. But there's a reason why there are rules in place, why there are referees, why there is coordination, especially with pro wrestling, why there is, the controlled chaos. There's a reason why. There's a reason why there are certain rules put in the UFC and other fight organizations. There's a reason why so situations like this don't happen. But this really isn't a conversation about that. It's about all of those things that I just discussed. And I'm going to link down below the GoFundMe for Psycho Stu's family. Yeah, I just think all around the situation is really, really fucked up. And I just wanted to talk about it with you and really prayers for his family and him and for his recovery and this whole situation. It's crazy to me as somebody who is faithfully paying attention all the time to combat sports news. Um, it's crazy to see how this story has expanded beyond that. Usually when certain things happen within combat sports, whether it's pro wrestling or um, MMA, a lot of time or like jujitsu, it kind of like stays in that little bubble. And this is the first time that I'm seeing people who never talk about combat sports, unless it has something to do with Jake Paul. Um, I'm seeing people like talk about it who never talk about anything combat sports related, like Philip DeFranco or MSNBC or just it's crazy how this story has exploded. And it's a sad situation. And that's it for this mini episode that hopefully was mini. Thanks for watching this episode of Not All Men. If this episode sparks something for you, share it. Keep demanding accountability in individuals, especially those of privilege, and also demanding accountability for the very systems that we're wanting to put people in. Um, Especially when we know those certain systems don't rehabilitate or educate. And yeah, that's all I have to say. Like I said, um, his GoFundMe will be linked down below. But Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.